afternoon, Girl Scout families. I am so excited that so many of you are joining us. My name is Lydia Soto Harmon, and I am your Chief Executive Officer of the greatest Girl Scout Council in the world, the Girl Scouts of the nation's capital. This is our first try at a virtual in your honor, and I know that it's going to be an exciting hour where we're going to celebrate the amazing Gold Award Girl Scouts and the girls who've earned the Silver Trefoil by doing amazing community service, over 100 hours of community service. So I want to say that one of the reasons that we wanted to do this virtual in your honor is that we know that we have many graduating high school seniors who are not going to have the opportunity to celebrate at the traditional end of year events. And so we, the Girl Scouts, could not miss a chance to celebrate you with your families. Hope that you are surrounded by the people that you love who are so proud of what you have done in your Girl Scout career. So, we're going to, this is what the ceremony will look like. We'll present the President's Award for Ethel G. Harvey. We'll talk about the Girl Scout Scholars, a tribute to all of our Gold Award Girl Scouts. We have a young woman of distinction from our council that we will be announcing. And we have invited an amazing Girl Scout, Elisabeth Bumiller, who is the Washington Bureau Chief of the New York Times, who's going to have a conversation and share some amazing pictures of her life and how it connects to Girl Scouts. And then we're going to do a tribute to our volunteers and parents, and we're going to get you back to your couch by 3:30 this afternoon. So hopefully this will be just an hour. So with that, we want to start by listening to Girl Scout Senior Kimberly Pagan from Woodbridge, Virginia, who is leading us in the national anthem. Thank you. Okay, that is the...
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Wow, that Kimberly is amazing. Thank you so much for singing the national anthem. That was wonderful. I just also want to tell you that we have over 150 members of our Girl Scout family that are joining us today to be part of the celebration. So we are so excited. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, before we do actually, I'm going to ask everybody to join me in reciting the Girl Scout Promise. So are you ready? I don't know if the slide is up for the Girl Scout Promise. Let's see if I can get my slide up. Okay, so on my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. So now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Manka Inywasu, our manager for program services. Hi, Manka.
Hi, Lydia.
How are you? She is going to help us recognize the recipient of the President's Award and our Gold Award Scholars. Manka, it's all yours.
Thank you. This is great. Thanks so much for joining us. Good afternoon. The mission of Girl Scouts is to create girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. Today is truly a celebration of girls who represent the fulfillment of the Girl Scout mission. I have the honor of presenting the President's Award in honor of Ethel G. Harvey. Miss Harvey, who served as board president of Girl Scouts Nation's Capital from 1972 to 1978, was known for her devotion and contributions to this council. In 1981, the board of directors voted to honor Miss Harvey by establishing the President's Award to recognize girls who exhibit the spirit of Miss Harvey's commitment to this council. Active Girl Scout juniors to ambassadors are eligible for nomination if they have demonstrated outstanding leadership and service to this council and promoted unity to the diverse community within the past year. The award is unique in that the selection is made by current Girl Scouts who choose those who they best feel exemplify the criteria. For embodying the foundations of this award, I am pleased to present the President's Award in honor of Ethel G. Harvey to Elisabeth Emmy Voss. Emmy is active inside and outside the Girl Scout community. She led the American Sign Language Club at her middle school and has been an integral part in providing programming for younger troops in her service unit. As one of her nominators said, Emmy has been vital to the culture in our troop for its level of acceptance to girls. For her lasting leadership and service to Girl Scouting, I am proud to award the 2020 President's Award to Emmy Voss. Emmy?
Thank you so much for the Presidential Award. Girl Scouts has been a huge part of my life, and I started as a daisy, and I'm so happy that I grew up in this council. I have made many memories and wonderful friends throughout my 12 years here at Girl Scouts. I know there are many others that also deserve this award, but I'm honored and humbled to be your 2020 Ethel recipient. Thank you again. Thank you, Girl Scouts.
Congratulations, Emmy. You will be receiving your certificate and pin in the mail.
Yay!
Girl Scouts Nation's Capital offers $1,000 scholarships to graduating seniors who have earned the Girl Scout Gold Award. The scholarships are merit-based, and the recipients are chosen after a two-part process that includes essays, letters of recommendation, and for finalists, personal interviews with committee volunteers. These scholarships are generously funded by the Sarah and Lawrence Phillips Girl Scout Gold Award Scholarship Fund, Eva Woolridge and Lynn Steptoe, an anonymous donor in honor of Marilyn Carr, and the Girl Scout Gold Award Scholarship Fund. The following slides feature this year's recipients. Amy Ballard, Sarah Bowie, Vivian Cow-Dow, Sophia Cooney, Alicia Gonzalez, Jessica Holloway, Rebecca Johnson, Varsha Kumarova, Bethany Massenberg Jackson, Kimberly Ross, Kayla Rothstein, Elizabeth Stanley, and Caroline Thorne. Congratulations to all of you for earning the Girl Scout Gold Award Scholarship.
Yay! All right, so now it is my let me turn my camera back on. Okay, thank you so much, Manka. So in addition to these 13 Gold Award Girl Scouts, we also award one scholarship for $2,000 to what we call our Young Woman of Distinction. The Young Woman of Distinction designation is intended to honor the Gold Award Girl Scout in her senior year of high school who has exemplified exceptional leadership for our council. She is selected by an esteemed panel of reviewers, both from a written application and an in-person, or in this case, a virtual interview. And the Young Women of Distinction also receives a scholarship in the amount of $2,000. This year's honoree for our nation's capital Young Woman of Distinction is Madeline LeBeau. And Madeline, are you with us?
I am.
So
Hey,
we're
how
so
are you?
excited.
I'm so excited too. It's such an honor to be here.
So tell me, you have been a Girl Scout for a very long time. What are some of the experiences that you've had as a Girl Scout that you will take with you?
Oh my goodness, I've had so many fabulous experiences as a Girl Scout in this wonderful council. Some of my favorite memories include my Girl Scout troop went to our chalet in Switzerland. We funded our trip there with selling Girl Scout cookies. So that was an incredible experience that I absolutely adored. But I think my favorite thing about Girl Scouting is that it really gives us an opportunity to serve our community. So my Girl Scout troop and I have had so many incredible opportunities to help people in our neck of the woods and also all over the world. We've done community service projects here, like the Share Garden of McLean, where we donated, where we created a garden and we donated all the produce to a local food pantry. We've helped people in Honduras. We've done, I've done my Gold Award, which is about connecting
I was going to ask you because this picture is part of your Gold Award project. So tell
Yes,
people what's happening in this picture. It's one of my favorite pictures to see you in
definitely.
charge there talking at Camp Kroll.
With you. Um, so in this picture, I am running a ceremony with my nonprofit called I Witnessed, I Remember, that works on connecting the greatest generation, or the generation who fought and won World War II, with my generation. Um, through I Witnessed, I Remember, I've had the pleasure of speaking with so many incredible World War II veterans and also other incredible heroes from World War II, including Rosie the Riveters. So in this picture, we are dedicating a Rosie the Riveter Memorial Rose Bush in honor of all the Rosies. So I remember teamed up with the Spirit of 45, and we created this initiative to get a Rosie the Riveter Memorial Rose Bush planted in all 50 states by the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, which is this year. Actually, VE Day was just yesterday, so very exciting. And yeah, so in this picture, we are here with Lydia and Charlotte Roush, who is a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and Eleanor Otto, who is the longest working Rosie the Riveter. She worked in an airplane factory from World War II until she was 94, and she was actually here at our Rosie the Riveter Memorial Rose Garden planting, celebrating her 99th birthday. She flew in all the way from California to be here with us and dedicate this incredible rose bush.
I remember because she said, I'm 99 years old and I still haven't become a Girl Scout. So we just like quickly whipped out a pin and we made her an honorary Girl Scout that day, which is amazing. So how many states have you currently been able to plant Rosie the Riveter rose bushes?
Yeah, so I Remember has planted the first Rosie the Riveter Memorial Rose Bush in Virginia, West Virginia, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And across the rest of the United States, I think our latest number is 29. So
Wow.
we're almost there. We're really close.
Yeah, that's great. So Madeline, you're a senior in high school. So tell us, what is it like to sort of end your Girl Scout career and your high school career and actually have to do some of these things virtually? What is that like?
Oh, I mean, it is definitely a really different experience. This year was especially important to I Remember because it is the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. So we really sort of had to alter our plans a bit, and we've been doing a lot of things online. We've been having calls with our World War II veterans. We're running a few events online. We're planning one for Memorial Day. If you'd like to hear more about that, please contact me. So that's definitely been really different. And also, it's been different having Girl Scout meetings, not in person, not with our friends, but we've been online. And that's definitely a really different experience. But that being said, I wouldn't change it for the world. This has been such an incredible journey throughout Girl Scouts, and I feel so lucky to be part of this incredible council and have such an incredible troop and an incredible support system. And even though this year isn't ending how we all envisioned, I still feel incredibly lucky and blessed to have had this opportunity.
That's great. Well, we're so proud of you being our young woman of distinction. And please share with everybody. So where are you going in the fall? What school have you chosen as the lucky school that gets to have Madeline as a student?
Next year, I'm planning on attending Princeton University, and I'm majoring in history, minoring in vocal performance.
Wonderful. Well, Madeline, we're super proud of you. Thank you for popping in, and
Of course.
congratulations again on being our young woman of distinction.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right, see ya.
Okay. So next up, the Girl Scout is our Gold Award is our highest award in Girl Scouting. I usually like to call it our PhD in Girl Scouting. And it is this year we had 203 girls who earned the Gold Award. So as we were planning this virtual meeting, we wanted to have something that would resonate with all the girls. And we thought the one thing that every parent wants to see go across the stage is their daughter. So we put a video together for you that has all the 203 girls who received the Gold Award this year. So here it is. All right. We're all learning with this new technology. Well, it is a huge honor for me to welcome to the virtual stage our next special guest, and that's Elisabeth Bumiller. Elisabeth is the Washington editor or the bureau chief for the New York Times here in Washington, D.C. She is a leading journalist, an author, and a commentator on politics and government policy. Welcome, Elisabeth. If you can turn your webcam on so that we can see you.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
So
Hello.
glad that you could be here. Thank you so much for joining us in this very interesting format that we're all just learning to go along with. Elisabeth has sent us some beautiful pictures. It feels to me, Elisabeth, like you have opened a photo album of your life that you're sharing with us. So I want to turn it over to you and we can go through the slides and have a conversation. So thank you so much for being our keynote speaker for In Your Honor today.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Manka, and congratulations to all the Gold Award honorees and scholars and the Silver Trefoil who are coming up, and especially to Emmy Voss and Madeline LeBeau. It's very inspiring to be part of this. Thank you for having me. Just want to say a few words before we begin with these slides. I am, as you know, the Washington bureau chief of the New York Times. I'm also, I should say, a third-generation Girl Scout and a third-generation Girl Scout leader. And I'm going to talk today about my job running the Washington Bureau of the New York Times, which is I'm responsible for all the news coverage, the challenge of covering Donald Trump and the White House and the Congress and Supreme Court, the CIA, State Department, the Pentagon, etc. I also want to talk to you about my years in Girl Scouting and how much those two worlds are intertwined and how much I really got out of Girl Scouting to help me, become a leader. And I just hope that what you see today is inspiring and will remind you that the Girl Scouts are an extraordinary organization. And at the very least, I hope to tell you some good stories. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So maybe, Colleen, we can go to the first slide. So this is growing up. This is early on. So it's interesting that you have kept a copy of your your newspaper from when you were in college at the Daily Northwestern.
If I'd had a chance to find it in the attic, I do actually have articles from the Walnut Hills Chatterbox when I was in high school in Cincinnati, Ohio. But this was handier. And this was, I think, the last article I wrote for the Daily Northwestern before I graduated. It was about, I went downtown to medical school, and the medical students, you see there were in an uproar because they had gotten a tuition hike. And it was a fun story to write because there was conflict and they were angry and the administration was in a tough spot. So that was the last thing I wrote for the Daily. And I was a Girl Scout. I got as far as juniors. I didn't get up to be a cadet or a senior.
So, and who was your troop leader growing up?
Well, it was Mrs. Potter, and then it was my mother. She took over the troop, and we had a really good time. The best thing I liked about scouting was the camping. It instilled in me a love for the outdoors that I still have. But I still remember, this was many, many years ago, Camp Butterworth, Camp Stony Brook, and Camp Ross Trails outside of Cincinnati. And I went to all of them, and I went to Girl Scout camp at Camp Ross Trails, and I loved it.
That's so cool.
I loved waking up in the morning. I love waking up in the mornings in a tent. I love the stars at night. I love the campfires. I just love the sense of freedom, and it smelled good.
The outdoors is such an important part of the stewardship that we're able to give girls. Okay, let's go to the next set of slides. So this is so interesting. So this troop 1511, and I guess those are your girls. So tell us about this.
Yeah. This was we were troop 1511. I ran the troop from 1995 to 2001. This was in Westchester, Putnam County, which is suburbs north of counties in the suburbs north of New York City. And we had 20 girls. This was the Memorial Day parade in Bronxville. I took the picture. It's Bronxville, New York is it's a small village in Westchester County. I took the picture. My daughter is in there frowning. I can see there. But, and this is the banner we carried. And I used to wear my Girl Scout shorts and top for this. It was always felt ridiculous. We walked down the main street of Bronxville. We had a good time. And then that over on the right was a flying up ceremony. It was a mixed troop. We had brownies and juniors at the same time. So there must have been some brownies. There were brownies flying up at because some girls were already had their junior vests. And that's me there on the right. I guess we give everybody sunflowers that night. It was late. It was outside the cabin where we used to meet. There was a Girl Scout cabin nearby, and we did it outside because we crossed over a bridge. So these are good memories.
Yeah. Oh, and look at these pictures. So you were really active those 6 years.
We were very active. We were very active troop. I sometimes felt.
How did you do that and work full time as a reporter at the same time?
Well, it was it was hard. I mean, but I loved it. My job was not quite as demanding then as it is now. I have to be honest with you. I couldn't have small children and a Girl Scout troop and doing what I do now. My kids are 30 and 26, and I just that's one thing I can tell you. I kind of got more responsibility, and as my kids got older, I mean, I couldn't have handled it when I was that much younger. But that time, I think I was City Hall bureau chief for the New York Times, and I was covering Rudy Giuliani. I also was a general assignment Metro reporter. So it was demanding, but it wasn't quite as demanding as what I do now. So this was a medley of all our community service projects. We did a lot. We did an after-school program, I believe, in Mount Vernon. Again, this is 20 years ago. Or we did a Saturday morning program. These are the kids we worked with. We also did a lot of, we planted a lot of trees and flowers and all over the area. We used to sing at the hospital, Lawrence Hospital, every Christmas. Sometimes we would bring instruments and play for the patients there. And I just have really good memories of that. On the right, well, that was one of our field trips. We learned about immigration that day. This was right when the Lower East Side Tenement Museum had just opened. I think it's in dire straits now, I'm sorry to say, because of the virus, but it just opened. And that same day, I can't believe we did it. We went to Ellis Island. It's a long day in Lower Manhattan. But it was great. It was very exciting because, again, it just opened up and we got a nice tour. And I was lucky because we were about half an hour outside of Manhattan, outside of New York City, but some of the girls lived in Manhattan, some lived in Westchester. We lived all over actually, but we had the wonderful camps in Westchester and Putnam counties, but we also had all this cultural activities in New York, so we took advantage of it.
That's great. And I wanted to say, I forgot to say this at the beginning, if any of the girls who are watching this, so if you have questions for Elisabeth, the chat box is open and you can type in your questions, and we're going to have a little time after we do this for girls to ask you questions. So if we can go to the next slide, Colleen, thank you. Oh my goodness, here you are camping.
Yeah, well, this was actually on the left there. That is Ellis Island. Those are 2 Ellis Island pictures, and then from the same field trip. And then we must have gone in separate days. Actually, I can't believe we did all that in one day.
A lot.
But then on the right there, that was one of the camps that we used to go to. That was Camp Luddington. And it was we were doing some very ambitious cooking that weekend. They were making, those are 100 meatballs right there. And they
Oh
were
my,
cooking them, as you can see, over the, they were cooking them over that little stove. And I guess we had spaghetti and meatballs for dinner that night. But it was a big, as you all know, it was a very big operation, taking 20 girls, 10, 11, 9, 10, and 11-year-old girls on a camp out in, it was always pretty cold when we went. So, but we had a good time. I loved camping on those trips too.
and do
They're
you
very,
still
those,
camp, Elizabeth? Do you still go
well,
camping?
yes. Well, in the last, once my kids got older, we started as a family, we started taking trips out west to all the national parks, and we would backpack. So for summers, we went to Glacier National Park, which is my favorite. We went to the Grand Teton. We went to Yellowstone. So, and they were pretty serious trips. They were backpacking, so we carried everything on our backs, and we went into the backcountry. Our son Teddy, is an Eagle Scout. Madeline's a very good camper, our daughter. So they were good companions to have. It was my husband, who has never been a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, who we had to bring along.
Bring along. Okay,
Yeah,
so the next slide, I think that we start learning a little bit about your career. So
okay, so I
grew up in Cincinnati,
ahead.
went to Northwestern for college, and then here are some pictures of you with some very important people.
Well, I went to Northwestern. Then what's missing here is I worked for a year at the Miami Herald in the Naples Bureau on the Gulf Coast. I was the Gulf Coast Bureau Chief. I had a fancy title, but it was one of 2 people so in the Gulf Coast. And then I went to graduate school at Columbia, journalism school in New York. And then I got a job at the Washington Post. And the job I got was a very strange job. I had wanted to, be a Metro reporter, but they said they had a job. It was the funniest thing was I had, this tells you about how careers don't work out quite the way you expect, but I had gotten a job at the Bergen Record in New Jersey because it was a good local paper in those years, and it was considered a feeder paper to the New York Times. And of course, I wanted to work for the New York Times. And right before I graduated, I got this note in my mailbox to call Sally Quinn at home. She had, at the time, was a very famous writer for the style section of the Washington Post, and I did. And they said, would you be interested in a job covering parties for the style section of the Washington Post? And I said, what? But as it turned out, I had gone to the dean at the school at Columbia in the beginning of the year and asked for money to throw a party for the whole class, which I had done. And that was why Sally had gone to them and asked who would be good to do this job. And that's why I was recommended. I was a good student, but
you can do 100 meatballs at a camp. You probably are pretty good at throwing a party.
So anyway, so I got this job I never really asked for or wanted, covering parties for the style section of the Washington Post. And they involved, it wasn't just like, it wasn't really social coverage. It was the parties included, as you see, a state dinner there at the White House with Jimmy Carter. I'm standing there with that long hair next to Helen Thomas, who's no longer with us. He was a great journalist. Asking Jimmy Carter a question. I'm there with Ronald Reagan asking him a question. That wasn't a party. That was a story I was doing on Mike Deaver, who's no longer with us. He was a senior White House aide. And then I was chasing after Zbigniew Brzezinski, who's no longer with us, and Henry Kissinger, who is, on some story I was doing about them having lunch together. So again, it wasn't exactly the job I wanted when I was 23, but I was so excited to get a job at the Washington Post, which at the time was the most exciting newspaper on the face of the earth if you were in journalism, because it was just a few years after Watergate and Woodward and Bernstein. And Ben Bradley was still the editor, and it's a very exciting place to work, even if I was covering parties.
So the advice for our Girl Scouts in terms of so this wasn't the job that you wanted, but you took it anyway. So what was that? Was it that you felt that taking a risk was worth it, or was it that when opportunity knocks, you just don't turn and say,
It was an opportunity. I mean, the Washington Post, as I said, was the most exciting newspaper in the world. I can't emphasize that enough. All the President's Men, the book had been a huge bestseller about how Woodward and Bernstein, about Watergate. And then there'd been this movie. And I thought, I want to work for the Washington Post. If they're going to offer me a job, I will take this job and I will make it into do a great job at this, and then I will make it into something else, which is what I did. Actually, at the time, you see there I'm talking to Reagan, that was for a profile I was writing about Mike Deaver, as I said, who was a senior aide to the president. And so I sort of parlayed all the people I'd met on parties into doing profiles and longer pieces. I started covering, Senate races and stuff. I mean, I worked really hard. I had to cover the parties, but during the daytime, I did other stuff.
That's great. Okay, let's see the next slide. Oh my goodness, look at this. This is a lot of international vistas.
Right. So the next thing that happened was covering a party, I met my husband. He was his name's Steve Wiseman. He was a White House correspondent for the New York Times at the time. It was the fall of '79. And we were covering the same party, which happened to be a fundraiser for Jimmy Carter, who was running for re-election. And it was an important fundraiser because the White House had put out the word that if you come to this fundraiser, you are on board for Carter. And so, and Steve was covering because he was covering the White House. And so we met, and we got married it was '79. We got married in 1983. And then Steve, who had been, covering the White House in Washington, joined the foreign staff of the New York Times, and his first assignment was India. And I had never imagined I would move to India, but off we went to New Delhi. And so I continued. I went part-time with the Washington Post because they already had a correspondent in Delhi. It was a bit of a career crisis for me. But I went part-time and wrote stories, and then I also wrote the first of my books. Because again, you take advantage of the situation. I had the time and the freedom, and so what you see here is me in a village taking pictures. I took my own pictures at the time too, taking pictures of those kids. Over on the left, that was one of my first weeks in India. That's the water buffalo behind me. I went down and did a story about, of all things, Elisabeth Moynihan, who was the daughter of the wife of Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, but she was in India unearthing a very important archaeological discovery. And that was a natural feature story. So I went down and interviewed her there in this village. And then a few years after India, we were in India for 3.5 years. I loved India, by the way. We moved to Japan, and this is just a picture from Tokyo of us at a Japanese restaurant drinking tea, I believe. I think that was my husband's boss at the time, Joe Lillybelt. He was the executive editor of the Times, and he came to visit, and so we took him around and we went to this restaurant. I don't have that many pictures of Tokyo.
Okay. Let's do the next one. I think the next slide is, so here are some of the covers so you wrote, top of the fold at the New York Times. Do you remember the first time that you wrote an article that was on the front page of the New York Times? What that feeling was like for you?
Yeah, it's a big deal. It was it's a big deal to, even now where we have so much bigger a bigger audience online than we do in print. It's still a big deal, and it was a really big deal then. And I went to the Times in '95 after we moved back from Japan. Became a Metro reporter for the Times. That's when we were in New York. And after a few years of general assignment, I ended up covering Giuliani. This was the day he dropped out of the race.
Wow. And then on the next page, I think we have a couple more covers of articles.
So then in 2001, I moved to Washington to cover the White House. I had moved a couple of times. I'd moved to India and Japan for Steve, my husband, and so we moved for me back to Washington, where we'd met for me. And so he at that time was writing editorials for the New York Times, so we moved down. And my first day on the White House beat was September 10th, 2001. That was my first day on the job. And why was that my first day on the job? Because I told my boss at the time that I wanted to settle my kids into school in Montgomery County, Maryland, and wanted to be home the first week that they came home from a new school. So my first day was September 10th, and then we know what happened the next day. And if you look in the corner there, you can't really see it. I have a story there on the front page at the very bottom saying this is what Bush, because I was covering Bush, this is what Bush did that day, which was half the day we couldn't find him because remember he was up in the sky flying around. And then the next one is just when Bush gave that speech saying, threatening war with Afghanistan, and we know what happened.
Mm-hmm. So the next slide is so interesting because you have written 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being an author is a really difficult thing to sort of the discipline to write. And in a biography, even harder because you had to interview over 150 people to write the biography on Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. What do you think you learned from the experience of sort of a long form writing, which is very different than writing for a news article? What things have you learned from that experience?
Well, it requires a great deal of discipline. I always, on each of these books, I made myself, I had a goal of 1,000 words a day, which is those are not a small amount of words. And the goal was 1,000 words. They didn't have to be fantastic, but they had to be words, 1,000. And I had a schedule. I mean, many authors do this. You have a schedule where you're going to do this chapter and this, you plot it out I have a year to write. I've got this many chapters, and you plot it out and you're very organized. And I always, it was like a job. You go to your desk, this office here at home, you go to your desk every morning and you write your 1,000 words, and you cannot stop until you write your 1,000 words. That's that. And it's not easy, and it's very lonely. I mean, because writing like this it's a different kind of writing. It's more, it's hard to explain. It's more in my voice than the New York Times' voice. And you have to find your voice, and that takes some time usually. The reporting is fun. I mean, I love the reporting because you talk to people, you meet people, you ask them questions, you travel, it's interesting. And then you sit down and begin the hard slog of writing. And then you rewrite and you rewrite.
Are you ready? Are you in the process of writing another book right now?
No, I have a novel sitting over in a drawer over there. 70,000 words of a novel, and it's the first draft. I turned it in when Obama was still president, and I was beginning to rewrite it because I don't know how to write a novel, and my editor in New York said you should do this and this, and I was making all these revisions, and then Donald Trump became president, and I haven't touched it. I haven't touched it.
Yeah. Okay. Next page. So here are some of the things that when you were on the staff of the New York Times at the White House, right? You were
right. Well, this was the one on the right. That's after I covered the White House. I covered the the 2008 McCain presidential campaign. I was kind of old to be covering a campaign, but they needed somebody, and I thought, I'll do it. And I never really covered a presidential campaign, from start to finish. And I like to joke that, a lot of I hung around with a really nice group of women, but they were all worried about their boyfriends, and I was kind of worried about getting my kids into college. So that was the difference in generations. But
different.
Yeah, and the left is from 2004. I was covering the White House, but the Times, as you can see, partnered with CBS to do one of the Democratic presidential debates, and so that was from New York, sitting there next to Dan Rather, ahead of the broadcast, and I was one of the panelists.
Awesome. And then the next slide. Here you are in Afghanistan,
right. And then after the White House and the McCain campaign for covering, I had put my hand up. I wanted to cover the Pentagon. I had sort of been interested in the Pentagon because when I was covering the Bush White House, it was obvious to me that the Pentagon was where all the power was because, it was Rumsfeld was the defense secretary. So I put my hand up, and so I covered the Pentagon for 4 years. This makes it look like I was like a really, hot shot reporter. this was in Afghanistan. I had gone over there to do a story about what at the time was they were called female engagement teams. At the time, women were not allowed in combat, but the Marines were experimenting with letting some women in combat. And I went and I covered them. And I have to tell you, I was terrified the entire time. I'm not a war correspondent. I'm not going to pretend.
You're a mom of 2 kids and
I was,
doing.
and it would turned out it was dangerous, much more dangerous than I knew at the time. But I'm interviewing Captain Emily Nosland, who was the captain of the 40 women who were part of this experiment, and they were going on foot patrols in Helmand Province in southern Afghanistan with the the Marine infantry, all male. And the idea was they were supposed to talk to Afghan women who wouldn't let the male Marines in their homes to learn about where the Taliban
This
were.
is a really sweet picture of your family.
Right.
And you are, so your daughter Madeline was a Girl Scout until she was in her sort of middle school years, and love of sailing, correct?
Right. This is Madeline in the front there. That's Teddy in the back. There's my husband. That's me. This was in Milwaukee. This was in Lake Michigan, off the coast of Milwaukee. Madeline at the time was working on a sailboat that was it was part of a crew of a sailboat, a tall ship, very huge ship that was this was the Dennis Sullivan, that I believe was a replica of a tall ship. And it was a floating classroom. They would take kids out and teach them about the Great Lakes, teach them about the history. And, she loved it because it was education and sailing. We had sent her away to sailing camp when she was 10, and the Hawaii sailing camp in North Carolina.
Okay. And then the last picture, I'm looking at the time. The last picture, I think, you at your
that's me in my
current office. So as you reflect, being a third generation Girl Scout, and you think of the incredible career that you have had writing books and covering politics in our country, what lessons would you share with our honorees as they finish their high school career? And sometimes when you are 16, 17 years old, you don't know exactly what you want to be when you grow up. So what advice would you give our girls as they're thinking about the future?
Well, I assume that they have learned a lot of leadership skills in the Girl Scouts, because I feel like I did. And I would say that what I learned from being a Girl Scout and from being a Girl Scout leader is something I still use every day to day. And so here are the things I think are important in leadership. I run a bureau, as I said, of about 100 people. Listening to people who work for you is extremely important. Organizational skills and organization. Setting a standard, setting goals. You're part of it. Usually, the best leaders have embraced a mission. It's not about you; it's about the mission. At the times we have a mission. I feel like humility is really important. Knowing what you don't know and finding people who can fill in where you're lacking. And what's really important is empowering people. People who are successful, or ace types, tend to be want to do everything themselves, want to be micromanagers, and you have to. I certainly was like that. But you have to empower the people who work for you. And you also have. So those are just my thoughts, and I learned all that, frankly, with the Girl Scout troop that I ran for 6 years.
Yeah, no, it is true. Empowering. I think that the combination of not being about yourself, but about the mission and about service to others is so important. I know that I'm looking at the time. So Nicole and Karina, do we have any questions in the chat box?
We have one question from Emma Chernisky. She would like to know, how much were cookies when you were a Girl Scout?
I think they were 50 cents, but I know then they were 50 cents, I'm pretty sure. But then I know when my girls were selling them 20 years ago, they were $2.50. Then they went to $3 in Westchester. I don't know I have a ton in my basement that I bought from the neighbors.
We just increased the price of cookies for the first time in 10 years this year to $5 a box. So they had been $4 for a very, very long time. That's a great question. So do you remember being a top cookie seller, or that was?
I was not. I had girls in my troop who were top sellers, who were really good sellers. But we also, sold other things to finance trips that we took. So
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Elisabeth, we are so grateful. Thank you for sharing your photo album of your life. Thank you for what you are doing in your job and inspiring our girls and inspiring women to sort of take it on and listen and have those organizational skills, set goals, have that humility, and most importantly, and what you've done for us today is empower others, because I think that that really is what Girl Scouting is about. So I want to say thank you very much for being
Thank you.
with us today.
Congratulations.
All right, so let's see. So next up, we have a tribute to our silver Trefoil girl. So I'm going to turn it over to Manka.
And while we're waiting on that, I'll give a little bit of information on the silver Trefoil. The Silver Trefoil Award is unique to our council and honors a dedication to service in the local community. To earn this recognition, a girl must give a total of 100 hours of service. By giving service in multiple areas, girls increase awareness of the unique composition of this metropolitan region. This year, 234 Girl Scouts have completed the requirements and are being honored today. Based on the calculations that the Silver Trefoil takes 100 hours, combined, you all have provided more than 23,000 hours of community service. Yeah, that is amazing. We trust that you will take these experiences you've had and you will continue to be role models for other Girl Scouts in your communities. Volunteers play an important role in the Girl Scout Gold Award. We want to thank the Council's Gold Award panel. This panel is made up of dedicated volunteers who spend several hours a month reviewing Gold Award proposals and offering ongoing support to girls who are working toward this incredible achievement. There are Gold Award panel meetings in Washington, D.C., at Camp Crowell and in Loudoun County in Virginia, in Frederick and in Southern Maryland, and a panel in the Shenandoah region. Thank you all for your dedicated service.
Yay! So Manka,
Lydia,
I want
back to you.
Manka's words of appreciation. We are so grateful for the time and the passion that you contribute to our highest awards. We also want to acknowledge the tremendous contribution that parents of Gold Award Girl Scouts and Silver Trefoil earners have made to their daughters, the troop leaders, the advisors. Each of you are part of this celebration, and we celebrate your success. So, because girls could not be, we couldn't be together at Trinity Washington University, we are going to be mailing, hopefully by the end of this month, end of May, we are going to mail to everybody at home, everybody who's registered and is in the yearbook. You will be getting this beautiful yearbook, which is now available online, but you will get a hard copy of it delivered to your home. We're also going to be sending a proud card magnet for Gold Award Girl Scouts. And in the next slide, you will see that we are also, this is a tradition that we started and now it's a national tradition, but girls will be receiving a green cord if they earned the hours for the silver trefoil, and a gold and green cord, commemorative cord for your graduation photos if you earned the gold award. So, and because we know that it's all about the patches, if the next slide shows you that we are also going to make sure that everybody receives a patch called Girls the World Needs. This is our second year of this incredible campaign where we are not only celebrating all the commitment that girls are making, but also ensuring that we're elevating the importance of the Gold Award, because it is our highest earned award in Girl Scouting. So if we can go to the next slide. Oh, there it is. So watch your mail for a special package to celebrate your accomplishments. To quote our founder, Juliet Gordon-Low, the work of today is the history of tomorrow, and we are its makers. I also want to do a special thank you to all the mothers out there. I hope that you have a wonderful, happy Mother's Day tomorrow. I want to thank all the amazing Girl Scout staff who has made this virtual In Your Honor possible. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye.